Good morning, everyone. I'm extremely mindful of everybody's time this morning. I want to thank Dominique Fede and also Farah Polius for two outstanding presentations in response to the so-called press conference that was held yesterday. I want to deal with some of the more salient points that the Prime Minister brought up yesterday. And I want to say that in years past, our policy really has been to respond to people when they have something of substance to say. When there are actual facts that are put on the table that we could potentially contest. And I see that sadly in the new era that we're in, that the truth is what you make it to believe. And the truth is not always supported by facts. And so we will no longer allow the SLP government to define who we are. We will no longer allow the SLP government to make inaccurate, erroneous statements. So first of all, Prime Minister started off by indicating that they had inherited an economic and social disaster due to the maladministration, reckless borrowing, and corruption over the last 5 years. So let's dismantle that aspect and break the term of the United Workers' Party down into two parts: pre-COVID and post-COVID. So if we look at the numbers from 2016 to 2019, and let's take 2019 as our benchmark year. So after 2.5 years of United Workers' Party's policies. And remember, when we came into government, it was doom and gloom. The unemployment level was 25%. They had not grown the economy in 5 years. We had seen one of the largest increases in the debt of this country. And literally, the country was stagnant. If anything, it was actually moving backwards. And I think that was reflected at the polls. We saw that in 3 years we were able to decrease the unemployment from 25% to 17 or 16.1%. We reduced youth unemployment from 44% to 31%. We upgraded 14 health facilities. We started the St. Jude's, the redevelopment of the St. Jude's hospital. We were able to start the HIA airport. We spent over $150 million in road improvements. We started the West Coast, got the funding completed for the West Coast Road, and the West Coast Road now is on the process of starting. We've seen the work at Cul-de-Sac Bridge, which has already started. We redeveloped and re-strengthened the John Compton Dam that had been sick for so many years and had exposed St. Lucia and to St. Lucians. The water project in the South, the people in the South had been waiting for water for so long. We see the continuation of that project where we're going to take water production from 1 million gallons a day to almost 4.5 million gallons a day. The water project in Deriso, the water project in Choiseul, the water project in Dennery, which we continued. And not only did we complete the phase started by the SLP government, but we actually went into a second phase of development of water in the South. Housing projects in Blasha, in Beauchat, in Lafargue and Forestier. And we've now seen afterwards the beginning of the Choc and also the Tavern housing developments. School repairs. We spent over $30 million on fixing up the schools of this country. Sporting facilities, Groselet Academy, the Dennery Sporting Complex, the Micoud football field, the Deriso football field, the Soufriere Mini Stadium, and lights throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia, including Lafargue. Most importantly, we did all of this by reducing VAT. And we also were able to increase government revenues by almost 20% from when we first came into office. Does that sound like a country in despair? Does that sound like you would have inherited nothing? And then we had COVID. COVID has become a global pandemic. It is probably one of the worst, both health, psychological, education, and economic crises of our time.
That's correct.
And we still don't know the full outfall of COVID. I call it post-COVID trauma, which is both going to be in education, going to be in health, going to be in people's state of mind. What did we see? Government lost in 2020 to 2021 over $400 million in revenue. We had bonds that were being redeemed, and the government had to find another $180 million in order to be able to pay those bondholders. Because we now had to expedite the movement into OKEU, we now had the cost of moving into OKEU, plus we had to maintain the cost of running Victoria Hospital. So we saw that there was an increase in the operating cost of government by almost $15 million a month. What did we do? Because of the work that we had done in the previous 3 years, the confidence that the international institutions had in St. Lucia, and the substantially improved fiscal outlook for St. Lucia, we were able to borrow $320 million EC, primarily from the World Bank, the IMF, and CDB. And these were not ordinary borrowings. These were borrowings that we were able to get it for 40 years, a 10-year moratorium at 0.5%. And these are monies that are made available to countries when they hit these kinds of international crises, a shock. Everywhere in the world, we saw countries having to borrow money. So this idea that borrowing money was unique to St. Lucia, or this government, my government, was acting recklessly, how could you make that in the face of the facts that we've seen? In fact, United Workers' Party, as the tradition goes, operated exemplary between 2016 and 2019. Our government was the first government to understand that we had to coexist with COVID. That's going back to March of 2020. We talked about lives and livelihoods and what we had to do to find that balance. Because I want to give St. Lucians an analogy. If you are in a dark room and you're blindfolded, and you've never been in that room before, would you find yourself running through that room? Or would you find yourself taking your time and feeling your way until you know and get a safer ground? And you go back to some of the basic things you know. That is exactly what we had to do. We had to temper our ambition. Our debt to GDP went from 59%. Imagine that in our 5 years we were able to bring the debt to GDP back down below the prudential level. And because of the borrowings of COVID, it went to 83%. But I want to put that 83% in context. St. Lucia's GDP contracted by 20%. And 80% of that contraction was because of tourism. Something that we had no control over. Planes were not flying. People were not allowed to fly. Did we sit and come and have press conferences to complain about the performance of the previous administration? No. We found solutions to the problem. And the best solution that we had in mind was in order to make up for tourism, because we did not know where tourism was going to go. We would put our best foot forward, we would live in hope and expect the worst. And what did we find out? Construction. Construction and the call center businesses were the areas in which we felt we could get immediate responses to make up for the shortfall of tourism. I'm proud of the work that we did with ITEL BPO in getting over 1,000 kids employed. I'm proud of what we did with Ojo Labs. I'm proud of what we did with KM Squared and many of the other call centers, in which we were able to make up a significant amount of the jobs that were lost in tourism. And the other area was in construction. And we immediately found fiscal space in order to get projects started on roads. And what was the goal? The goal was not to cut the grass on the side of the road that within 6 weeks the grass would be back. and we have nothing to show for the money. The goal was to meaningfully employ people, not for 1 week or 2 weeks, but for months at a time. And many of the St. Lucians who had equipment, in order to get them, they have additional revenue in their homes. And at the end of the day, we would have built up a capacity in the country, and when this awful period of this pandemic comes to an end, that St. Lucia is ready to rise like a phoenix out of the ashes. But we never came and complained. Never complained once about what was taking place at COVID and said, oh, look what the Lord has done to us. We put on our boots, we rolled up our sleeves, and we did what we do the best. We worked. Now, let us look at the results. The Prime Minister likes to talk about the science. He's following the science, always following the science. He can't tell you what the science is, but he's following the science. Well, United Workers' Party also followed the science. Yeah. So let's look at the science of United Workers' Party for 18 months and the science of Labour Party for 5 months. In 18 months, United Workers' Party saw 80 deaths and 5,500 cases in 18 months. The Labour Party in 5 months have had 230 deaths and 11,300 cases. The numbers speak for itself. The only science that the Labour Party is following is political science. And Farah spoke about it. The ability to make the tough decisions. Not always do you give your child what the child wants. And I'm not saying that the people of St. Lucia are children, because I know how we take these things. I'm making an analogy. As a government, you cannot always just do what everybody wants. You have to do what is right. And the government is in a better place in many occasions to make that decision because they have more information available to them. And the reality is, the science of the United Workers' Party was the right science. And it was the one that provided St. Lucians with the greatest amount of protection from a health perspective, and at the same time allowed our economy to be able to grow. So let's take this Christmas period. Everyone in the government is admitting that they knew that there was going to be an outbreak after Christmas. They had last Christmas to go by, and they had the results of the elections. Anytime there's going to be an increase in social activities in our country, there is going to be a consequential increase in cases. If you cared about the people of this country, why would you have not sacrificed Christmas and New Year's? 2 weeks. In order to protect the lives of many St. Lucians and their livelihoods. Yeah. The same students that you say you care about. Yep. Would you not know that because you had an outbreak, there was a possibility that you would have to send kids back home? Yeah. United Workers' Party wants to see the kids in school. We genuinely believe that kids are safer in school. But that is undermined when you are having these kinds of numbers, and it takes consultation. Consultation. I want to bring up radical vaccines. Really? We're still having this conversation? My government came out and held a press conference to say we were purchasing vaccines and that we were participating with Bahamas and Barbados to purchase those vaccines. We told everybody how much we were paying for the vaccines. All of the documentation is there. The Ministry of Health vetted, Attorney General's office vetted contract, and the Ministry of Finance. To come and suggest that there was some breach in the procurement act is irresponsible. And what is more irresponsible is the Prime Minister knows that the money has already been paid and the rest of the money is due to be paid within the next 30 days. Where is our money from Rochamel? Where is the loss of revenue from Grindberg? Where is the millions of dollars that were lost in cost overruns? And then the Prime Minister has the audacity to say that what the $7 million could have been used for. At the time that we were making the purchases, we had no vaccines. None of the countries in the developed world were giving us. Both as a Prime Minister, OECS and CARICOM. We made pleas to the UK, to Canada, to the United States, African Union, every single opportunity, everywhere we could try to search to get vaccines. It was the Indian government that finally came through to us in a small but a very meaningful way at the time. I had no idea. I knew that we were going to be going to elections, and I knew what the fallout would have been from elections. And I wanted to give every single St. Lucian who wanted to be vaccinated an opportunity to be vaccinated, because we at the time did not have enough vaccines if people wanted to become vaccinated. That is the chance we took. The examples around the world of people that got scammed, and we were aware of it. And so I want to make it very clear. The reason I went with that direction with Radical is, one, because Barbados and Bahamas were involved. Two, the gentleman does business in St. Lucia and owns land in St. Lucia. So that means that if he did not fulfill on his contract of supplying the vaccines, and also did not fulfill on his obligation to repay the money, that the government of St. Lucia would have recourse. And those are some of the difficult decisions that you have to make when you're a Prime Minister. But I did it in the best interest of the people of this country.
Yes.
I was spending the money on vaccines. Now I want to know that when the Prime Minister receives the entire amount, he's already received $1 million US, how he's going to spend it.
Step. Step program.
I want to talk about bananas. You talk about inheriting a mess when we came into government. NFTO, a disaster. Had never worked. And I can say it, incapable and incompetent. And a lot of the problems that we had today was because NFTO could not make sure that the standard of bananas and the consistency of that standard was there in order for us to continue to secure our market in the UK. Winfresh, this government again has no shame. It was under their administration that Winfresh was allowed to make investments in factories and investments in the OECS and the Windward Islands, in St. Lucia, in Dominica, in St. Vincent and Grenada. And not one of those investments is profitable. And as a result of that, Winfresh was subsidizing the losses. And so the millions of dollars that the government had to find out of our coffers in order to make sure that the banana farmers were being paid and the market remained open was for that inefficiency. And I am proud of the fact that we actively participated in the receivership of Winfresh to make sure that the most important thing that Winfresh had, which was yeast and the transportation, that we did everything to secure that. And I think that we're well on our way, if you have a committed government, with the re-establishment and now the involvement of government in NFTO, of the possibility that bananas are going to be rescued. And this continual claim by the Labour Party that there was something wrong with the French market. Are you telling me that a government that had ambitions of diversifying a new market, what's the difference between talking about the French market and the Caribbean market, and sell his bananas? I think that that is a good thing. Since it's been started, and the one that was just laughable is that an OK EU that's not financed. We said it in our campaign in 2016. The reason why the Labour Party never opened up OK EU and only had a naming ceremony is they did not know where to find the money to operate it. For 3 years we've made it public. We've had all kinds of discussions. The estimated cost of running OKEU is $70 million a year. Estimate. The actual cost of running Victoria is $35 million. And that's why we were going to introduce healthcare insurance. Because we knew that the government could not pay for the operating cost of OKEU or our health services by ourselves. And that's why we said affordable quality healthcare. And today, that would have been introduced. Today, St. Lucians would have benefited from a $70,000 insurance coverage per year. And we would not be sitting here worrying about where the money was going to come from to fund OKU. But what has happened, in typical Labour fashion, you will run ahead of everybody else to scream something without thinking and getting the facts. And now they are finding themselves, how are they going to keep it operational? And to make matters worse, you were supposed to have shut down Victoria and transferred that money to OKEU. You're still having to run Victoria because of COVID. The corruption and the rule of law. The Prime Minister said that he will apply the full force of the law against people who are in breach of it. Hollow words, because the evidence of his action is there not to speak for itself. Rovergate. The evidence is so clear. And my fellow St. Lucians, it's a simple question. If in fact the Labour government wants to defend Ernest Hilaire in what he did, then let's open it up to everybody, because you said you're going to put everybody first. So does it mean now that I can expect that I can go to the St. Lucia High Commission in the UK, tell them I want to buy a car, give them the money, have them buy the car in the name of the High Commission so I can get my duty free, and that they will then transfer the car back to me? Is that now available to all St. Lucians? Is that what we're saying we can do? For those people who say nothing was done wrong, if nothing was done wrong, then wow, there's a loophole, and let's take advantage of it. And let all St. Lucians, let all our minibus drivers and all our taxi drivers and let all our farmers now buy their vehicles in the UK duty free to save 12.5%. The minister's account, the report is there. The St. Jude's report, audit, the report is there. To put a man in your ministry, it's your discretion who you make a minister. All of the information has been made public on Richard Frederick. And while the people of Castries Central can pick and choose who they want, the decision to put him in your cabinet is rests on the shoulders of the Prime Minister. And if the Prime Minister wants to speak about integrity and following the rule of law, start there. Start with all of these. Do you know how much more meaningful it would be, those words that you are providing, if in fact you started in your own house? Seditious statements. So when Mr. Henry went to a church, and we right now believe with a gun, with the intention of killing Guy Joseph. Not anybody's church, you know. He left his home, got in a car, and deliberately went to Guy Joseph's church. The following day, I didn't hear the Labour Party condemn that action. In fact, what I saw the Labour Party do was to support Mr. Joachim Henry and to say that he was the victim. Tricia Lionel, when she made her comments about me, I didn't hear the Labour Party say anything. When your own in opposition said that you would take away the citizenships of all the people who became citizens under our administration, that was not seditious. The allegations and the threats that were made against investors in this country, that was not seditious. And more recently, you have a person who was a journalist who is now in the government on the payroll of the public service who publicly threatens somebody, admits to threatening that person, and you have nothing to say? So I'm saying to you, it's the hypocrisy. Finally, I want to say, United Workers' Party has democratically, in our traditions, accepted the results of the last election. And in fact, facilitated and participated in the peaceful transfer of that authority. I want to say to Mr. Pierre that the only landslide that he has is a landslide in Parliament. The fact is, the Labour Party won with 51.4% of the popular vote, and only 51% of the people turned out, the lowest ever. So I want to say to him, the only landslide that we see right now is a landslide in increases in COVID cases. The only landslide that we see is in victimization. The only landslide that we see is the increase in the number of lies on a daily basis. The landslide in the increases in the number of excuses. But most importantly, and this is the one that the Prime Minister needs to be the most aware of, is in the landslide loss of confidence in his government. The SLP continues to put politics first. So I want to say to you that I believe the real intention of the press conference that was held yesterday was to lay the ground for the budget coming up. First of all, the Prime Minister indicated that the budget was going to be on April 22nd. In keeping with his own claims, that is not what the Financial Act says. In fact, the Financial Act was amended, and he's expected to lay the estimates of the House before the end of February, and he's expected to lay the appropriations bill before the end of March. But I want to say, all of a sudden, trying to lay blame on the economic situation on United Workers' Party to justify and to do what? He has already said that what he wants to do is he wants to lower cost and increase tax revenues. How? How is he going to do that if he is going to waive property taxes? How is he going to do that if he's going to increase the threshold of people paying personal income taxes? How is he going to do that if people no longer going to have to pay property taxes? So I would say to St. Lucians, watch your bread. I believe that this government are giving serious consideration to increasing the VAT rate of this country. And what I don't know is which projects and which ministries they intend to cut. Because that's exactly the direction they're going to go in. And that will be, in fact, another promise that was made. The fact is that there was a budget in 2021, April to be exact. All the facts of what the finances of this country were laid out. Yet in the face of that, they still went and made these irresponsible promises to everyone because they put politics first. It was more important to them to get into government than to run government. And we are going to pay a very serious price as a country for what is taking place. And I want to put Mr. Pierre on notice that this opposition will not be intimidated. Whether he likes it or not, whether he feels I've accepted the loss or not, I take our role as leader of opposition and in opposition very seriously, even if it's only two voices. But I've reminded him, and I remind him again, that 70% of the people of St. Lucia either did not vote for the Labour Party or did not vote. And many of those persons now can see for themselves that the big lie is starting to unravel. And United Workers' Party will be ready and will continue to put responsible pressure. We will not make any false allegations against anyone. We will use facts. And I would strongly suggest to the Prime Minister that he is doing himself and the country a disservice when he holds a press conference and only has hollow words, meaning he only has what the symptom is and cannot tell us what the prescription is going to be. And that you are seen as a very weak person, that when you continue to blame others for your plight. You wanted to be Prime Minister. You said it was your turn. You knew what the country was facing. You had 18 months to live with COVID. You could see what was taking place in the entire world. You had the facts at your fingertips. You knew what you were going to get into. The reality is the Labour Party has no plan for the economy, has no plan for improving the social output for solutions, and more importantly, and we're seeing it very dangerously, they have no plan for COVID. I thank you.